My name is Ibi Funke, and I share tips with international medical graduates to help them thrive in their careers. The HMRC tax rebates, but they also matter when it comes to your study leave budget. Because if you say you want to go for this course and it's twice your annual budget, if you haven't used up your budget from this year, there might be an opportunity to put 2 years together because it's so close to the change in the financial year. So I would encourage you to always ask the question about what you want to do and what you want to achieve. Having talked about all the things that can take you away from your income and talked about your income and how to plan, I think it's really crucial that we talk about how to protect yourself. I think every doctor is a very valuable asset. So human beings, of course, are valuable. Every human being is valuable. But doctors are valuable in that the knowledge that you have within you it takes so long to build that. It takes so long to fine-tune that into the professional that you are, delivering the services that you're capable of delivering. And if you think about the fact that you've been sort of imported to deliver that value as you're in the UK, that shows you how big and how important it is what you do. So I think it's really important for us to protect ourselves. As international medical graduates, we can't shy away from the fact that we're more likely to be referred to the GMC than if we were UK trained graduates. So there's the indemnity that comes from the NHS, but I think it's wise at this point for everybody to get some indemnity to protect themselves as well. Depending on how long you've served and worked in the NHS, there's also there's an amount of cover you get for sickness. So you will still get paid. If you had a long-term illness, you would still get paid for a duration of time based on the length of service that you've provided. However, the critical illness cover also goes beyond that to make more resources available to you to cover looking after yourself and your family. So these are things to consider. I think life insurance, personally, I think this is invaluable because if the worst were to happen, I would like to think that there's one less thing for the family to worry about. So they're sort of left free to grieve rather than having to think about looking after themselves whilst grieving. So that's why I think life insurance is important and why I would recommend it. Home ownership is one of the, I think, most talked about things, in my opinion, in the UK, getting on the property ladder. This is something that people talk about all the time. As IMGs, there are a lot of myths and, there's a lot of discouragement that happens around the topic of owning a home. We get discouraged because we think that we will not be offered mortgages because we haven't been here long enough. We're on tier 2 visas. We don't think we've saved enough. There's a lot that happens around this. So I'll share my personal experience and hopefully that helps in everyone's journey. So the first thing to say, I think, with regards to home ownership is understand your journey. I knew from when I arrived that I wanted to be in a training program. So all the jobs I did prior to getting into training were sort of working towards training. And as I was moving, so within the first 3 years, I had moved 3 times. Or no, actually within the first 4 years, I'd moved 3 times. And each of those times in those places I lived, it wasn't the right time to be thinking about a house. But the problem with not thinking about it at that point was it meant that I wasn't saving toward it. And I wasn't doing any research. I wasn't understanding anything about the home ownership journey. So if I could talk to myself at that point when I came in, I would definitely start saving as soon as I came in toward my deposit. The next thing I so as soon as I felt like, okay, I was in a training job, I knew I wanted to be here for some time, I wasn't planning to move again, I started to research. And as I researched, I found out things about mortgages, things about how to, get on the property ladder, who I needed to be talking to, what kind of houses I wanted, things like that. So once you get into that mindset, before you even start to think, it's useful to be aware of the landscape. And then if you have goals, like there was a point where I had said to myself, okay, within the next 2 to 3 years, I want to be purchasing a home. And at that point, there was a clear goal in my mind, and I was working consistently toward that goal. One of the ways I saved towards the house was to use a lifetime ISA. And it was until a cousin of mine drew my attention to it, and she was like, you need to get a lifetime ISA. I looked into it and I thought, okay, this is a good thing. So one of the things, there are rules about how you open a lifetime ISA, and I think one of them is that you need to have it opened before you turn 40. Another advantage of saving in a lifetime ISA is it costs you to, if you're not using that money toward your pension or towards purchasing a home, then it costs you to withdraw that money. So once the money goes in, it's very difficult to get it out. Another thing that's really good about this account is for every £4 you save, the government will give you £1, and there's a maximum saving of £4,000 each year. So whatever money you spend in there, you then get additional money towards your house. So that's a really good thing about that. Once you feel like you're ready and you've started looking at property, it's helpful to talk to a mortgage advisor, and you can get a decision in principle based on what your earnings and outgoings are. So they kind of look at your earnings, they look at your outgoings, and they say, okay, we think we can borrow you this amount, and then you know what your maximum limit is in terms of what the kind of houses you can afford, and that kind of works its way into how you think. So say, for example, you were thinking that you could get a 5-bedroom, fully detached house sitting on 1 acre of garden space. Once you get your decision in principle and say it's like £300,000, and that property that is in your imagination is £1 million, you need to either start thinking about how you can get your deposit higher so that you can get £1 million, or you need to be realistic and start looking for houses that cost £300. So that's how that helps. The stamp duty is a cost to the house that is based on how much the purchase price of the house is. And on the government website, it says you need to pay that within 30 days of making the purchase of the house. So something we didn't know was that our solicitors would want the stamp duty at the same time as which we were paying for the house. We hadn't anticipated that. So there was a bit more running around when it came to the actual purchasing of the house. So it's useful to have all of this knowledge so that when you're getting to the point of making your decisions and your purchases, you leave room to allow you maneuver when you're actually purchasing the house. And hopefully at a point in the future, we'll then be talking about building wealth, and we'll be talking about the equity on homes and how you can acquire more than one property. Pension is a very hotly debated topic amongst international medical graduates, whether people often debate about whether they should opt out or whether they should stay in. Today, I'll be talking about my opinion, which is most of what this is anyway. It's my opinions based on my experience. Personally, I'm pro-pensions, and these are my reasons. When you pay the pension, number one, you get paid for the rest of your lifetime after you've retired, so monthly payments. When you pay into the pension, your employer contributes towards that pension. So it's not just what you're paying, your employer is also contributing. So that's number two in terms of the benefits of the pension. Number three is that if you, after pension age, were to pass on, your family will get paid that pension as well. So it just doesn't disappear. It still gets paid out to your family. Number 4, if you were to unfortunately pass while after paying the pension for a while, your family will get paid a lump sum death in service benefit. These for me are reasons why I think this is, for me, it's a no-brainer. I think it's a good thing. Another reason is that because your pension gets taken out of your salary, your pension contribution gets taken out of your salary before you actually get taxed, that amount that you're taxed is less. So you pay less taxes because your pension has been taken out before you're taxed. So these reasons for me make it a no-brainer for me to stay in the pensions, but you can opt out. And I've seen that if you opt out, you can still ask your employer. I think there are specific situations where this is an option. I don't think it's just generally available, but it's worth asking the question. If you choose to opt out, you can still get the contributions that your employer would have made if you were paying the pension. So if your team opt out, then you should definitely ask this question so you don't lose out. I've included maternity leave in this part of the discussion because I took 2 different approaches for the 2 episodes of maternity leave. The first time I was on maternity leave, I asked to withdraw from the pension. So I got paid back my contributions. This was taxed. So what I got paid back was not what I was expecting at all. So I didn't feel like this was the right decision. And then you can't just keep opting out willy-nilly. So the second time around, instead of opting out, I paused my contributions, and this was to maximize what I was earning during my maternity leave. And then once maternity leave was over, I opted back in. So hopefully people can make informed decisions about pensions, but these are my thoughts about why to stay in the pensions. If you're a woman who's planning to be pregnant, who's pregnant, or planning a family in general, it's very useful to think about how you plan your finances during your maternity leave. Your pay depends on the duration of your service before you go on maternity leave. So it's useful to know, will I be paid or not? B, if I'm going to be paid, how much am I going to be paid? And that will help you plan how long you should take for maternity leave. So just roughly speaking, first 6 months are paid by your employer if you've had long enough service in the NHS. The second 6 months are not paid by your employer. Duration of pregnancy should be covered by statutory maternity pay. So it's useful to look into that and make sure that you're eligible. We've talked about the pension contributions and how you can manage that. So depending on how long you've worked in the UK, you can decide on whether you want to opt in, opt out, or just continue opt in, opt out, pause your payments during the maternity leave. As a pregnant woman, you will get free dental care. I never took advantage of this, and having now paid a few times for dental care, I would recommend that you take advantage of that during your maternity period. If you have a family, it's very key that you plan ahead for childcare. Look into the options for tax relief around childcare. Plan your use of nursery around when you will have free nursery hours. So say you have family available to look after your child in the first 2 to 3 years, then be aware of when you become eligible for the 15 to 30 hours. Approach the nursery that you want to use early enough so that the applications can be put in at the right time and you can get your places at the right time. So planning for childcare. If you're choosing property when you have a family, you need to think about areas that are safe, places that you want your children to live. You'd be happy for them to play around. There are parks nearby, things like that. If, say, you're choosing the size of property that you want, think about it from the perspective of when your family grows and expands, if this will still be comfortable. So when it comes to childcare, planning, and the earlier the better. We've talked a lot about things that can impact your earnings, how to maximize your earnings. What are the things you could be saving for potentially? So deposits for your home purchase, if that's something that you want, saving towards emergencies that may arise. Thinking about holidays, there's a big holiday culture in the UK, and if you've not come from that sort of culture, it's one that's really nice to imbibe. So saving towards holidays, planning ahead. And specifically, I just want to mention self-care, because a lot of us spend a lot of time looking after everybody else. We spend a lot of time thinking about others. We spend a lot of time working, and we don't take time. And I'm saying we because even as I'm speaking about it, I know that I do not dedicate any significant amount of my resources to just looking after myself. I think this is something that is important, and a culture that we need to build as we work harder and harder toward achieving our career and personal goals. So having talked about all these big sort of topics that we've mentioned now and discussed, I just want to talk about some tips that don't necessarily fall into any category of what we're discussing. I've seen people talk about and take advantage of cashback options that are offered by certain businesses. So this is a case where you've shopped and then you put in your shopping, enter the code, and then that store gives you cash back. Most of the time, you can only spend this back in their own store. So it's kind of a way to build your relationship with them. If you're living in a house, so say you're a single mom or a single dad, you can get a council tax rebate as for a single person household. So that's something to take advantage of. Heating is one of the things that consumes the most resources from within your accommodation. So planning electricity and heating, so energy efficient bulbs, how you deal with your heating, keep your house warm, things like that can help you save money. Medics money is, and this is not a paid advertisement, it's just I've enjoyed using their resources, so I like to share things that are useful. Medics money is they're across platforms, so they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn. Are they on LinkedIn? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then they have a podcast, and the podcast, they provide their content very regularly, and they share tips that are specifically tailored to medics. The two people who run it are doctors themselves. One of them is also a chartered accountant. So they're very knowledgeable, and they also bring speakers on board who share experience and knowledge. So I found them very useful, and I would definitely recommend them to anyone who's trying to learn more about how to manage their money and make better financial decisions. The Thriving in the NHS Journal has a section that is devoted to your financial well-being, and this encourages you to think about what your financial goals are, set goals and targets for yourself, and then invites you at the end to celebrate your wins once you've set those goals for yourself. So at the beginning, I introduced myself, and I'll do the same thing again. My name is Ibifunke Pigbaotemolu. I share tips with international medical graduates so you can thrive in the UK. You can find resources using this link. This is where all the information we provide is aggregated in one location, so that you can just pick what is relevant to you and what you'd like to enjoy. On Instagram, we share content on my personal page, as well as Thriving in the NHS page, which you will find to encourage you along the way in your journey. Every month, a newsletter goes out, and this is just to encourage everyone in their journey. It will again share my experience and highlight how you can make the most of your whatever difficult situation that you're facing. So if you'd like to get the newsletter, you should sign up to it, and you'll get encouragement straight into your inbox. On Amazon, you'll find 2 resources, which you can hopefully see behind me. So one of them is the Thriving in the NHS book, which is an international medical graduate's guide to starting out in the NHS. It gives you a concise location to learn most of the things you need to know. So on calls, moving, exams, things like that, you can find all of that in the book. And Thriving in the NHS journal invites you to set goals for your future and keep track of what you're accomplishing as you go along the way. So that brings us to the end of the session. I can't thank you enough for being here.